You definitely don't want to be missing today's interview. Terry Tucker has worn many, many varied and interesting hats over the years, including being an undercover narcotics investigator and a SWAT Team Hostage Negotiator. But he's also a motivational speaker and the author of our featured book today, Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Living Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And most recently, he's also a cancer warrior. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more on our featured author. If you're just joining us, welcome to Books with Bridgetti. I'm your host, Bridgetti Lim Banda in Cape Town in South Africa, and our stream is made possible by StreamYard and BeLive Media. The show is interactive. It's an audience-centric show, so I'm monitoring the comments. Whether you're watching us over on Amazon Live, I've got my phone right here and monitoring the comments. And I want to say a warm welcome over on LinkedIn to Tish already. Great to have you watching. Welcome to the show. Everyone else is watching us over on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. A very, very warm welcome to you. Thanks for joining us today. Now, before I introduce my amazing guest, Terry Tucker, and the great book that he's going to be talking about today, one of the things we do on this show is to help you level up on your online appearance. Now, most authors today are still going the hybrid route of introducing their books to their fans and their audiences. And so we've got a few tips to share with you on that. One of the things that I recommend is that you invest in an external camera if you are busy wanting to promote your book. Now, if you've got the funds, and I know that most authors don't, but if you're fortunate enough, you could invest in a DSLR camera. But if you don't, a webcam is a great way to go. And the one I recommend is anyone in the Logitech range. But I personally use the Logitech Brio, which has got trademarked bright light and HDR technology. And all that really in English means that you don't have to fuss too much about the light, because it will automatically adjust to your lighting conditions, which makes things so much easier. But what you do want to ensure is that people can hear you clearly. And what I use myself is the Samsung Studio Condenser microphone. It's got a very solid die-cast construction, which helps to reduce noise vibrations. And so for that reason, a condenser microphone is a great way to go, but not everyone wants to or needs to use a huge, big microphone. And so what you can use is something like the Rode Lavalier, which is a simple clip-on microphone, which makes your sound so much better. But do invest in something. This is the Rode Lavalier, and I can recommend that one. Now, I know a lot of authors simply use their phones, and there's nothing wrong with that if you want to show off your books. What I do recommend is that you do stabilize your phone somehow. And two things that I recommend to stabilize your phone with, in addition to A tripod is something like the DJI Osmo, which is a 3-axis smartphone gimbal, or you could use something like the iographer. And a quick tip for you, I know a lot of people go live on their phone and they keep their phone in portrait, which is that way. And the reason why you don't want to do that is you will see 2 black lines on your screen. To avoid those black lines, turn your phone into landscape mode, and then you've got bigger real estate the way you're seeing me now. And it's so much easier, so people can actually see you and your book at the same time if you hold your phone in landscape mode. And then also just a quick tip on sound. If you don't have another microphone, just use ordinary earphones, just something in addition to your built-in equipment. On to our amazing guest today. Terry Tucker, as I said, has worn many, many different hats over the years, but he has also been an undercover narcotics investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator. He's a motivational speaker, and he's the author of Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Living Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And most recently, he's also a cancer warrior. So without any further ado, let's invite our amazing guest to join me. Terry, welcome to the show. Great to have you join us today. I am so pleased that we finally have this opportunity to chat.
Well, thank you, Bridgetti, for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I must tell you, when I started reading your book, I couldn't put it down. It was so captivating. What was the inspiration behind you writing this book, Terry?
Yeah, the book is really born out of 2 conversations that I had. I used to be a high school basketball coach, and one of my former players moved to the area in the United States where my wife and I live, and we had dinner with them, her and her fiance, one night. And I remember saying to her, I'm really excited that you're living close to me and I can watch you find and live your purpose. And she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she's like, well, coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents, and then living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man in college who reached out to me on social media and asked me what I thought were the most important things that he should learn, not to just be successful in his job or in business, but to be successful in life. And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others kind of thing. Not that those aren't important. They are very important. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. So I thought about it for a while and I started to take notes. And eventually I had these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles, and I sent them to him. And then I kind of stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So as you mentioned, I'm a cancer patient. And in 2020, I had my leg amputated and I had a 3-month window before I started chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs. So during that 3-month period where I was healing from my amputation, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories underneath each of the principles. And that's how sustainable excellence came to be.
Wow. Now, I know that a lot of people, you often get sort of younger people saying to you, how do I get to the next level? Or, what do you recommend I do? What is it that really made you want to dig deeper than the obvious? Because that's what a lot of people do. They kind of just sort of skim over and say, work hard, work long hours, get a good job, study harder. Um, what was it that made you wanted to really, really um, go the extra mile? Why did you care so much?
I guess I've always wanted to, whatever I've touched, whatever I've been associated with, I've always wanted to be the best. I've always wanted to do the best. I mean, that was one of the reasons I became a SWAT team hostage negotiator. The SWAT officers are usually, excuse me, are usually the best. They have the best training. They get the best equipment. And I've always been like that. I've always wanted to be, if I was going to do something, I wanted to do it to the very best of my ability. So, I've read so many books over the course of my life. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I've got something in my throat here.
No worries, it happens.
So many books over the course of my life where they were just regurgitating the same thing over and over and over. And I didn't want to be part of that. I wanted to see if I could set myself apart or set my book apart. And again, I'm a novice at this. This is the first book I've ever had published. And so I was really kind of feeling my way through it. But I set the goal really, people ask me, how did you write the book? I had two goals. Number one, I would write at least one page every single day. And number two, I wouldn't edit anything until I had completed the first draft. And there were certainly days where I sat down at the computer where I wrote absolute garbage. I'm like, this is terrible. This is never going to see the light of day. But then the next day I wrote something that was better. And then the next day, something that was better. So it was just a matter of sticking to it and then having something that I felt was a little bit different or a little more unique than all the other books that I'd ever read. So that was really kind of the reason I didn't just go along with the crowd. I wanted to develop something that was better and I guess something that was a little more unique.
Well, you certainly seem to have accomplished that. Do you admit any of your story to your upbringing, to your parents?
Oh, absolutely. I think I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall. And I went to college here in the United States on a basketball scholarship. And both of my brothers are also athletes, have also been athletes, including one brother who played professional basketball here in the United States. And so my parents, I think, were a great example of what I call the divide and conquer parenting, where it'd be like, okay, Terry's got a game, at this time, and Larry's got a practice at this time. So mom's going to this game and dad's going to this practice. So my parents were extremely efficient, I guess, for lack of a better word, at figuring that out, of figuring out how our schedules were going to mesh and things like that. So mom and dad really, in addition to that, taught us the importance of family, of caring for each other, of loving each other, of supporting each other. And I remember after I graduated from college and I was working, I was unfortunately living at home, helping my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. And I remember one day my youngest brother had a high school basketball game. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm not going to the game. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go to the gym. I haven't been there in a few days. And my dad looked at me and he's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm an adult here. Yeah, I'm going to go work out. My dad's like, no, you're not. You're going to go to your brother's game because that's what our family has always been about. And my dad was absolutely right. I didn't go to the gym. I went to my brother's game because, like I said, my parents taught us that family is about loving, caring, and supporting each other.
Now, there was something interesting about you getting into narcotics and investigator and into the sort of into the police service. That your father didn't have anything to do with that, right?
My father didn't want me to be in that. My grandfather, his father, had been a Chicago police officer. Chicago is one of the larger cities here in the U.S. and had been a Chicago police officer back in the 1920s to the 1950s And he was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad always remembered the stories that my grandmother told about the knock on the door of, Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us. Your husband's been shot. And so when I expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to go to college. You're going to get, major in business. You're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. Unfortunately, that was what my father wanted me to do. It wasn't what I felt was my purpose or my passion or my why, whatever you want to call that. So yeah, you're right. I had a choice when I graduated from college. I could be like, well, sorry, Dad, I know you're sick, I know you're dying, but I'm going to go blaze my own trail. Or if you sort of look at my resume, and this is exactly what I did, out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. And my first 2 jobs out of college were in business because that's what my dad wanted me to do. And I sort of joke that I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away, and then I followed my own dreams.
Wow, 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 wow. Well, very good parenting. And Tish in the comments says, just agreeing with, how amazing your parents obviously were. So getting back to your book, how long did it take you in total to get the book done?
So I had a first draft within 3 months, but again, I know a lot of people have jobs and families and other commitments and things like that I didn't necessarily have. So like I said, I was healing from having my leg amputated, so I was able to spend every day, at the computer, putting words on paper. And, eventually this is, sustainable excellence, came about it. And so once I had a manuscript, it was like, well, do I have a book? Is this any good? I mean, like I said, my first book had no idea. So I sent it out to some friends. I'm like, here, will you read this? Tell me if this is worth, pursuing the next step. And they all collectively said, yeah, you should try to get this published. And I ended up being in law enforcement. I had an individual friend of mine who introduced me to my publisher. And coincidentally, my publisher had been a former undercover narcotics investigator. He'd been a police chief here in the United States. And one day a friend of his asked him, he said, would you mind coming out to California and putting on a presentation for authors who want to understand police tactics and use them in their books? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He ends up going out to California, doing this presentation, and ends up meeting his wife, who has like 35 best-selling fiction books that she has written. And the two of them started a not-for-profit publishing company. And I got hooked up with him, and that's how I ended up getting the book published.
That is amazing. Now, Tish has known me for a long time, and she's asking one of the questions I always ask the authors, usually a bit later in the interview, but since she's asking, I'm going to ask you now. How did you, she says it's a beautiful cover. I totally agree. It is a beautiful cover. And so she's asking, how did you come to decide on the cover? She jumped in the gun, but I'm going to let it go. How did you decide?
No, thanks, Tish. I appreciate that. The part of, the publishing process was a cover design. And so the publisher, Five Stones Press, had artists that they, were commissioning to develop the cover. And they started out by asking me simple questions, like what colors do you like? And, what kind of fonts do you enjoy and things like that. And, I never really thought about that, but I gave them my thoughts and they developed a cover. And the first cover they came up with, I showed it to my wife and my daughter and my brothers, and they're like, no, this isn't going to do it. And if you look, I have 10 principles in the book. And if you look at the cover, there are 10 stones or that basically form a path, and the stones lead upwards, and so I'm like, well, how about something like a path? And that was all I suggested. I didn't suggest colors. I didn't suggest anything else. And they came back with this cover design that we have now. So it was really, I know I've heard of authors that go through, 10 or 12 designs before they get to something they like. I was good with the second one. The second one they presented to me, I was like, yeah, I think this is going to do it. And it's simple. It's not, it's not something that's really going to, overwhelm you. But I think it's subtle enough that, oh yeah, these stones kind of mimic the 10 principles.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you want to hold up that cover and just show us what it looks like? Colors, how do you decide on the colors?
Yeah, they presented these colors the second time around. Like I said, the first time I like blues. And so I said, I really kind of enjoy blues. And the first cover was too much blue. And so I was like, no, I don't think so. And they came back with this sort of greenish gray color. And it seemed to go with the stones and the background. And I'm like, yeah, it just seemed to work for me.
That's amazing. Now, the title of the book, how did you decide on the it's quite a long title, but I think I understand why you went with that. So just tell me what was your thinking process behind the actual title?
Yeah, I think, just like the young man that asked me, what do I think are the most important things he should learn? And the story that I told you about, I've always been interested in being the best, being part of the best. And so that to me was, okay, that's the book is about being excellent and not just in your job or in business, but being excellent overall. But I think so many people in life, they claw and they scrape and they get to a point where they're like, okay, I've made it, I've arrived, whatever that is for them, this is excellent. I'm at the pinnacle of whatever I decided to do. And then what do? They sort of sit back and, kind of put their feet up on the desk and be like, wow, look at me, look what I've achieved. And then, 6 months, a year later, somebody surpasses them. Somebody goes and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I've arrived. How can this person be better than me or this company be doing better than my company's doing? And I think that was what I was trying to portray, that we get to excellence, but once we get there, how do we sustain it? How do we keep going? How do we keep being excellent? Because so many people just kind of sort of sit back and like, okay, I've arrived. I don't need to work that hard anymore. I don't need to do that. And the point of the book was, no, when you get to excellence, if you want to stay there, you need to change. You need to adapt. You need to keep moving forward. You can't just sit back on your laurels. So, I was kind of thinking about a name. And so I had the excellence part of it, but it was like, yeah, it's missing something. What is it missing? And it's, well, how do you get to excellence? And then how do you maintain it once you get it? And that's where sustainable excellence came in.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And it's all encompassing. And I really liked your explanation in the book about what excellence is and how do you sustain it? How do you measure success? Because a lot of people sort of say, well, once I've climbed the mountain, I've attained success. But I'd like your explanation about how that looks different for every single person, and you compare one with the other because there's just so many variables and across circumstances and all kinds of things that there's no sort of thing that you could call makes you successful. But I also liked your take in the book on not measuring your success against sort of what I would term worldly goals or education, because some people don't have access to education. But does that mean that they can never reach a point of excellence in their life? I really like that kind of reasoning that you were exploring in your book. How has the book been received?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No,
I was going to say that a lot of people ask me that, how do you define excellence? And when I say, I don't know, they're kind of, wait a minute, you wrote the book. I mean, how do you, but But you're right. I mean, excellence, I may look at the same thing you're looking at, and I may say that or that person or that company or whatever it is we're looking at is excellent. And you may say, yeah, it's good, but I don't think it's excellent. And so, I kind of talk about in the book that excellence is sort of like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. You may think something's beautiful. I may think it's attractive, but it's not beautiful. So it really is kind of open to everybody's individual interpretation.
Yeah, it's subjective.
Yeah, it is.
There's no kind of absolute way of determining beauty or excellence. And I must be honest, until I actually read it, I never really thought about it that way. But it did sort of make me think a little when I read that. Can I ask you, would you just read a section out of the book for us, just so people can get an idea?
Sure. I'll since we're on that topic, I'll start because the introduction is pretty much about excellence and what it means and things like that. So this is the introduction. I'll give you a few pages here. It starts out, when fabled Green Bay Packers football coach Vince Lombardi took over the fledgling team, he said this to his players: "Gentlemen, we will chase perfection, and we will chase it relentlessly, knowing all the while we can never attain it. But along the way, we will catch excellence." But what is excellence? And how do we know when we have achieved it? Numerous synonyms describe the ethereal word excellence: outstanding, brilliant, high quality, indispensable, or extremely good. We look at profitable companies with unique cultures or successful artists who relentlessly slave at their craft, or difference makers who attempt to positively change the world as being excellent in their field. The Greek philosopher Aristotle defined excellence as a mean between two extremes of excess and defect in regard to a feeling or action, as the practically wise person would determine it. According to Aristotle, a mean cannot be calculated and is relative to the individual and circumstances. To Aristotle, excellence was defined by the person and the condition under which it was viewed. So excellence, like beauty, tends to be in the eye of the beholder.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much for reading that, because it's very explanatory, and it just gives you a taste of what the book is all about. Who has been your, did you go when you decided on publishing? How did you decide? Did you go traditional publishing? Did you self-publish? And how did you decide?
Actually, I did not self-publish. I actually went through a publishing company, Five Stones Press, similar to the story that I told you about how I was introduced to the husband and wife team. It's a very small publishing company, but at the same time, with Leah Silveri is the wife, Scott Silveri is the husband. Scott was the police officer. Leah is the award-winning author. So with the background Leah has in writing so many books, they're small, but they have the same, different editors. The book went through 3 different editors that, kind of put it down. And I've obviously, being a guy, I've never had a baby before, but this is as close as I've ever come to creating something, sort of out of nothing. And I remember when the editors would be like, well, you should, elongate this, or take this out, or this doesn't belong, or work on this. And I would be like, no, wait a minute. I wrote the book. It should be the way I want it. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. These are experts. These are people that know what they're doing. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. This is my first attempt. So I would always be like, okay, if I didn't want to do it, I'd say, let me sleep on it. And I would say 99.9% of the time, the next morning, I would get up and be like, yeah, they're the expert, and I'd reread it, or be like, yeah, I need to expand on this, or I need to take this out, or I need to shorten that up. I would always go along with what the editors suggested, because again, they're the experts. I mean, it would be like when I was a policeman, you coming along and telling me how to be a policeman when you have no background or experience in that. I had no background and experience in this. So I went with what the editors told me to do.
Wow. And did you get a publicist, or are you doing your marketing yourself?
I'm pretty much doing the marketing myself. Scott and Leah have helped along the way in terms of different things that they've suggested that I have done. I am somewhat limited because I'm still being treated for cancer every third week. So I have a very small window when I can actually do things. But it's been fun for me. I don't. It's funny when the book was published, I was like, okay, the book's out. So, I've got to sell books. I've got to sell books. I've got to sell books. And I had an award-winning business author that I'd connected with on LinkedIn over in the UK who kind of pulled me aside. And he's like, Terry, you're missing the point. He said, your job is not to sell books. Your job is to help people. If you help people, your books will take care of selling themselves. And I was so glad that he said that to me, because I didn't write the book to make money or to get famous or to get more speaking engagements or anything like that. I really did write the book to try to make a positive difference in the people who read it. And it's funny because I had an 87-year-old man who bought the book, read it, and then reached out to me. And he said, Terry, I had no idea who this guy was. He said, if I would have had those 10 principles when I was younger, I would have had a much better life. And so that made me, it certainly made me feel good. And like I said, it's not about getting famous or making money. It's really about helping the reader to have a better life.
That's amazing. So Tish is asking in the comments, she says she's out in Chicago, and she wants to know, she thinks the book is brilliant, and she loves your storytelling. And she wants to know, are you planning to do any in-person book events at any point?
I'm hoping to do that with COVID and with having tumors in my lungs and things like that. With my cancer, I've really kind of done most of what I've done virtually. And I know I don't like it because I like people. I like being around people and things like that. But out of necessity for my health, I have really, unfortunately, not been able to do those things. Even my speaking engagements have been virtual because of COVID. Now that I've been vaccinated, now that things are sort of, getting to a point where we're understanding how to live with the disease, I hope, long answer short here, I hope at some point in time to do some kind of in-person events. I don't have anything scheduled at this point.
Well, I think that's kind of where a lot of authors are at the moment, although, some places are opening up. Right. But, one also has to take cognizance, like yourself, of your own health challenges, which has to come first. But I'm sure at some point, when things are better with your health, that you probably would look at it when it's safe to do so. We don't
Absolutely.
know. Yeah. We don't know. And I think a lot of authors are kind of going that route at the moment. They're not quite sure how things are going to pan out. I see that a lot of events are starting to go the hybrid way, and some events are going in person, and so that's great. One really is hoping that things will start to open up a little bit more. So where is your book available at the moment? I know it's on Amazon. And for those of you who are watching us on Amazon, the book is in the carousel. So if you'd like to grab a copy, please feel free to do so. Are you planning at any point to do an audiobook? Is that on the horizon, or is that not something you considering at the moment?
It's been discussed. I've discussed it with the publisher, and again, I'm learning, more things about how, the difference between men and women. More men, like audiobooks as opposed to women. Women like to, have the book in their hand. Again, that's a huge generalization. I know, some women like audiobooks, some guys like to have the book. So we're discussing it. It's just a matter of whether they want to put the money up to do it in that. So we'll see. We'll see if it gets to that point. But it's available in in an ebook right now, and in a hardcover and a paper book or paperback.
Well, that's not many authors or first-time authors that I'm aware of will start off with doing an audiobook. So the very fact that you're even discussing it is interesting. Just the fact that you're sort of saying it's not off the table, and Tish is saying that she loves audio. I know a lot of women who love audio. I think these days we're all multitasking to some extent. Um, Especially if you're still part of the workforce, and so people find that it's great while they washing the car or doing the dishes, or cleaning the house, that they listen to an audiobook. So it's just another avenue, an additional way of getting your book into the hands of people. But for now, the fact that you just have a book, I'm sure. Do you find that it's a good conversation starter though when people hear that you are an author?
It is, and it's even more of a conversation starter when people read it, because as each of the chapters is a principle, and what I find is that there's always one principle that seems to resonate with the author or with the reader. That they're like, oh, hey, number 5, and they're not in any particular order. Number 1 is not any more important than number 7 by any means, but it's always fun to me when I talk to somebody who, oh, I read your book, and you know what, number 5 I really like, so that kind of starts the conversation and things like that. And even for me, I wrote all 10 of them, but there's one of the chapters is entitled "Most People Think with Their Fears and Their Insecurities instead of using their minds," and that's my favorite one. That's the one that resonates with me because I've done it. I've done it a lot of times in my life where it'd be like, oh man, I'd really like to do that, but I'm kind of nervous. I don't know if I'm good enough, or what are people going to say about me, if I fail. That's thinking with your fears and your insecurities. That's not thinking with your mind. And I've done it. And I think a lot of us do it from time to time throughout our lives. So it's one of the ones that I kind of like. And yeah, it's always fun to see which one resonates with a reader. And then that's a great, conversation starter based on that.
That is amazing. I was just going to ask you, what is your favorite chapter? And then you answered that. How did you decide on how many chapters to have in the book, and what to put in and what to leave out? Because, I think that is sometimes a difficult thing for authors to decide. Do I put that in? Do I not put it in?
Yeah, I like I said, my first book. So I put everything in, including the kitchen sink. It was like, let's just put everything in, and then literally the experts, the editors were like, "Nah, you got to take that out," or "Yeah, that's good, but you need to expand on that," and things like that. So I figured, if it was going to happen, if it came into my mind, I was going to try to find a way to put it into the book, and then let the experts tell me, to take it out or to expand on it or to leave it or whatever they wanted me to do. I don't know why it ended up being 10 as opposed to, 5 or 20 or whatever it was. I kind of felt 10 was manageable. You start getting more than 10, I think you start to lose people. And I really it just seemed like 10 is what it worked out to be in terms of, well, okay, that one and that one and that one. Okay. And I really didn't leave anything out. There wasn't anything they're like, well, maybe there should be an 11th one. I really felt that 10 was sort of the magic number, and it just worked out that way.
Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. And when it came to reviews, how do you feel about book reviews? Because a lot of authors tell me they have a hard time sometimes when they don't get a good book review. Have you had any that where people sort of differed with your thinking?
I haven't had any where people have differed with the thinking. I have had ones where, if you, I think the lowest on Amazon that I've ever gotten, I had 2 women who bought the book in Ireland and gave me 3 stars instead of 5. And I didn't have any exception with that. I understand that, books are going to relate to people in different ways where, you may love it. It goes back to what is excellence. It's sort of in the eye of the beholder. I think that's true with books as well. I realize that not everybody's going to think it's 5-star material, I put a 5-star effort into it. I gave it everything that I had, but I also realized that it's, sort of different strokes for different folks. And people are going to be like, yeah, I really liked it. Or, yeah, it was good. But I've never had anybody say, oh, yeah, this was the worst book I ever read or anything like that. So I guess that's at least a positive.
Well, you definitely get 5 stars from me because I can tell that you put a lot of yourself into the book. That there was a huge investment of who you are, your authentic self. You have a great way of telling stories. It's I can tell there's a lot of your heart in that book. Um, Almost like a memoir of sorts that your family could look back at one day, because it tells your story, your personal story, and things that you want people to know about yourself and know about life. And you've done a great job. Did you take any writing classes at all? I mean, I really like your style of writing. Did you take any writing classes at all?
I really haven't. I was, my, I guess, forte in school was always sort of the English and reading part of it. When I was a freshman in high school, I had to take Latin. Went to a Catholic school, so I had to take, Latin as a foreign language, and I think that really helped me with writing. And when I was early in my business career, I had the opportunity to work with a chief operating officer of a very large hotel hospital. And one of the things that we had a monthly magazine, and every month she had a program called Direct Access, which meant any of the 5,000 employees could ask her any question about anything. And I was the person who kind of did the legwork for her. And then I would write it up, and then I would meet with her before the publication date, and we'd go over the answers. And I remember telling me one day, she said, I really am glad you're doing this because your writing style is much more aligned with mine than somebody else. So it was easy for me, and it was easy for us to work together and collaborate and say, yeah, this is what I want to say, and this is how I want to say it. So I felt fortunate in that regard. And even when I was a police officer, when we had to write reports, I had a supervisor who was great at writing. And so she would be like, hey, you should change this and things like that. So I didn't take any classes, but I guess I paid attention along my life when people have helped me in my writing.
Mm. I can tell. I can tell that you pay a lot of attention to detail in your style of writing. That's very easy for anyone to see, um, in the book. So wow, kudos to you for doing this. Anything on the horizon for doing a follow-up at some time? Like, are you planning to write another book?
I think I am. I think I would like to. Now, whether I do it or not, we'll see. I'm kind of pulling stuff together now for potentially a second book. Sustainable Excellence is a book about success, how we can be successful in life. And I think I would like to write a second book also about another word that begins with S, and that is significance. Success is what we do for ourselves. Significance is what we do for other people. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you can be both. I think you can be successful and significant. But I think there's a lot of emphasis, especially in business books, about, how do I get rich? How do I get successful? How is it about me? And I've always believed in my life that, we're here to serve. If you believe in God, to serve your God. If you don't, then certainly to serve our fellow man. How can we make a difference, a positive difference in other people's lives? So I think a second book on significance would be something that I'd like to try to tackle and see what happens with it.
Well, I definitely would look forward to reading your second book, because just judging from what you've written in this first book, I think it would be amazing. But for now, I think you're doing the right thing by just focusing on getting better. because that is always a priority, just taking care of yourself first, and everything else will follow. So are you doing any sort of virtual speaking engagements at the moment, or have you just taken a complete hiatus?
No, I am doing some virtual arrangements. I'm going to be down. I live in Colorado. I'm going to be down at the Broadmoor this summer, speaking to a banking a state banking conference that's having their annual convention there and things like that. So things are starting to open up, and I'm excited about that. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's really just now starting to get some traction where more events are occurring in person as opposed to being virtual.
Absolutely. Terry, don't you want to just hold the book up again? It's such a beautiful book, just so people can see the cover again. So there we go. That is Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Living Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And by Terry Tucker. So Terry, thank you so much. It was amazing talking to you. Thank you for sharing a bit about yourself and your journey and your book. And I would definitely love to have you back as a guest on the show again. This was amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. It's nice people like you that allow me to come on. And I always say that if our conversation makes a positive difference in somebody's life today, then today's been a good day.
Absolutely. And I want to say a huge, big thank you to our audience, everyone who's joined us over on Amazon Live, on LinkedIn. A huge, big shout out to Tish there. Also over on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. It was amazing. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And all I want to say is stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you on the next episode of Books with Bridgetti. Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Big pleasure. So, Terry, I need to tell you something. I wanted to sort of formally end the show, and anybody who's watching now, I wanted to just formally end the show because I'm going to have to edit this end bit. I'm having something happen that's never ever happened to me on a show before, like in ever. My computer is completely frozen. I have not been able to control anything during the interview, but I thought, let me just finish it all off, end it off, because then I can edit that last section. But I think I'm literally going to have to hard reboot my computer.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, that's terrible.
I have been streaming for 6-7 years, and this has never ever happened to me, like in ever.
I hope I'm not bad luck for you. So.
No, absolutely not. It was wonderful talking to you, and I realized it was way in the beginning of the interview already, because I do a lot of things in the background here while I'm streaming, and I suddenly realized, but I can't do anything. Anything I'm clicking on, it's not working. And I've been I thought, okay, let me try because one of the great things about streaming on a browser-based software is that you can close down your browser and restart, and it doesn't end the broadcast, which is fantastic. And I thought, while you were reading, let me quickly take the opportunity. I don't know if you saw me at one point closing my camera, because I thought, okay, let me try and shut it down quickly and restart Chrome while you're reading. And that didn't work.
I'm sorry, I should have read longer.
And in the end, I thought to myself, oh, well, let's just carry on talking and try see if we can finish the interview, and then I'll hard reboot my computer.
Oh. You got to love technology, don't you?
You've got to love technology. Oh my goodness. I actually don't even know if this has ever happened to anyone else, but It's the first time that it's happened to me. And I just thought to myself, well, there's nothing I can do. Let me just carry on talking.
Well, I had no idea. So yeah, you did a great job.
Well, I was having sort of like, at first I thought to myself that there's no point in trying to panic about this because it's not going to change anything.
Right.
Let's just carry on talking and see if this will magically self-correct at some point. But it hasn't. It's just completely frozen. And it's amazing. I mean, it hasn't kicked me out of the stream or anything like that or done anything. It's just completely frozen over, nothing I can do. Thankfully, technology, I can go back and I can edit out this section from the interview. But anyway, thank you for being a good sport.
Sure.
I didn't know whether you had realized something was wrong or
I
not.
hadn't. I'm sorry. No, I didn't realize it at all.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, thank you very, very much. It was lovely talking to you and getting to know you again. And hopefully I can get to invite you back when I don't have technology works along with me a lot better.
Absolutely. I would love to come back and talk with you.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks very much. Take care. I'm gonna have to just literally do a hard reboot on my computer. So anyone who's watching, that is what I'm doing. I'm going to have to hard reboot my computer. Take care and stay safe, everyone. Take care, Terry.
Take care. Bye-bye. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone. Take care and stay well until next time.